Guys, look what has finally returned. The Skaven are back, joining Age of Sigmar with the latest version and a new launch box release. This is Skaventide, and what you'll find inside is a Stormcast Eternal army and a brand new Skaven one. In this video, I'm going to be a bit of a cheater spaghetti eater and paint as fast as humanly possible by both deploying speed painting and batch painting techniques. I'm way too excited to get some of these little rats to my painting desk, so let's just get straight to it. Might help if I actually take the box with me. Where's 35, you little bastard? Finally, all the preparations are complete, the minis are built, primed in grey and ready to roll. And this scabby little rat looks kind of grim and dark, and it's the perfect style for starting off with a bit of slop chopping. For this, I'm going to be using Army Painter's matte white paint, but any solid white paint will do just nicely. I'll be using my biggest dry brush so I can apply the white as quickly as possible, and accuracy isn't a large concern for me here. The final tool in this step is trying out my new texture palette from Game Envy, and I'll leave links to everything I use as normal in the description below. This texture palette is going to help me remove most of the paint from the brush, but not take out all of the moisture that you find happens when you use things like kitchen paper. This allows for a smoother and less chalky finish to the dry brush applied paint, and then it's just a matter of quickly and roughly applying the white paint by lightly catching the miniature with the large soft dry brush, slowly working layers of white paint into the raised parts of the mini, boosting how bright the highlights will look when we apply the colour, as well as really popping back out all of the details the miniature has and making my tired eyes have a much better time seeing what the hell is going on with each rat. The first part of the actual paint job to start with for me, and the biggest colour decision of this entire job, is the skin and fur of each model. I'm going to be trying out a bunch of different combinations as rats come in all kinds of colours, well, all kind of neutral ones. You don't see that many rainbow coloured rats. With so many choices in nature, this will be a fairly subjective choice for you, so grab whatever colours you want your rats to be, but in this video I'm going to try and pair a bunch of paints in mind with a light and a dark version to try and blend them together a little and make these rats look fairly realistic. For my first rat, and maybe some more as we go through this batch painting process, I'm going to have the skin in Ashen Stone and the fur in Gravelord Grey, and this will make up my grey rats. I'm going to apply this lighter grey all over his body bits, so his face, his arms, his hands, legs and feet, but I'll also be getting the lighter version on all the fur parts as well, because the darker grey will go over the top and darken down those actual parts of fur with ease, so there's no need to be super accurate, I just want to be consistent. Then while the Ashen Grey is still wet, I'm going to apply some of that Gravelord Grey over the top, and this is going to just help a little bit with the blending. I'm not that fussed about the accuracy of my blending, but while the parts are both wet, it will just help me get a little transition between the light and the dark grey onto the fur. With that grey rat out of the way, it's time to lean on the awesomeness of the practical naming on the speed paint bottles, making it super easy, barely an inconvenience for me to find a light and darker versions of the same tones of brown. With that, my second rat will come with a pallid bone skin tone and a brownish decay darker yellow brown for the fur tone. Once again, I'll go with the lighter coat all over the organic parts of the miniature, and then while that is still slightly wet, apply the brownish decay on top of the parts that are fluffy fur. I think you've got the gist of this now, but I'll try out one final colour combination in this video to make a darker, browner rat. This time I'll be using warrior skin for the skin and ruddy fur for the fur. The clue is in the name here, but this combination will make up my final choice. With these colours fully locked in, I will finally be able to start taking some advantage of batch painting and speed up this process by getting these rats to the table by choosing my favourite rat colour combinations and then using some of the already shaken up and already poured paint to apply it to the 2 remaining rats. If I'm honest with you guys and I wasn't recording a video, I'd actually be doing about 8 rats at a time. This would improve the efficiency of my batch painting process, but I find more than 8 and I get a little bit burned out and a little bit bored, but less than 8 doesn't quite get me through my backlog fast enough. Question for you guys, how many miniatures do you batch paint at the same time? I'd love to hear it, I'm sure everybody else watching would too, so do please leave that in the comments below. With all these little ratatars skins done and dusted, it's time to crack on with some more batching. I'm going to make mine fairly traditional and follow along with the example colour scheme on the box. Blood red will do nicely to get a similar looking shields, and in the interest of uniqueness I'll also do one of the rat's little skirts in this bold red. I'm going to pick this rat in particular because his shield is the furthest away from his skirting, and that will avoid the 2 parts being too close together and kind of blending and looking less impressive. As for his shield and all the other rats with shields, I'll just give them one quick coat of this colour. The speed paint is going to work its magic and get into the grains of the wood, darkening those bits down and give a great look of depth to these shields. The next bit is a nice, easy, straightforward one, as I'm going to do all the rats exactly the same. This bit is doing all of the metallics. That's chainmail, plate mail, helmets, weapons, you name it. Actually, do try and name anything more because I think I've got them all and got you good. We'll use the Broadsword silver speed paint. It's the mid speed paint silver, and we want to use a fairly small brush for this part, as a lot of the chainmail is kind of fiddly to get in amongst the skin, fur and clothing. I'd normally do the inner parts of the miniatures first, but I do find the metallics go over the top of the other speed paint colours reasonably well and cover up basically a lot of my mistakes. We're also going to do the trim on the edge of each shield with this same silver. Once again, it's why I did the red first, as the silver is stronger and will mostly cover it up. Having said that, today it looks like the red's fighting back a little bit, but I have a sneaky biscuit trick up my sleeve for the end, and any mistakes or slip-ups of paint will be covered up with effects like dirt, grime, rust or blood. It's not going to matter guys, it's not going to matter at all. I'm going to cover up all of my blunders and no one is going to know. One final tip during this part of the paint job is to keep remembering to stir the metallics, because they do tend to separate. If you've been painting for more than a couple of minutes, do remember to give it a quick stir every now and again to mix back up the paint. That's the most repetitive parts of the minis done now, and we will be moving on to some of the more unique parts of each miniature. For this, we're going to take some of our more bland, neutral, pleasanty, peasanty colours, and we'll apply this over the Skaven's various robes, skirts, garments, as you will, whatever they are wearing. I'm going to choose to use about 5 of these different colours for 5 different miniatures, but then lean on the batch painting aspect. I'll be making them all unique by choosing different colours for different parts of each model, but sticking to this same 5 paint palette to be able to get through them all quite quickly. If you do happen to be following along exactly with the colours at home, these specific colours I've grabbed are Murdercene, which is a deep red, and it's an absolute staple in my painting collection. It should fit in very nicely with this particular army. I'll also be using a combination of burnt moss, being a dark blackish greyish green, and I'll combo that nicely with a brighter lighter algae green. And then my final neutral and medieval colour choice of today is Tyrion Navy. Once again, a real dark blackish blue. Basically, I want all the dark neutral colours that should fit into this army well. The larger areas of clothing are now covered, and I'm going to continue my batch mentality by using the colours that I've already got in the palette to paint up the final bits of clothing detail. A little bag on this model, we can use the lighter green to pop that out quite well and give it some nice contrast to the drab clothing he has on. I can reuse that Tyrion Navy I had on the top of this one's cloak to do the straps on his weapon, these kind of bandage things. While I've got this Tyrion Navy on the brush, I may as well do this other one's muzzle straps, contrasting with the rest of the colours on the mini and adding a nice little bit of detail here. For those of you who can count and notice I said I'll be using 5 colours and then only showed you 4, it's because there are a couple of rope-like parts on some of these sculpts, and for that I'm going to bust out a Rigor Mortis. This is a very neutral light rope looking colour and it suits these little bits well. But while I've got it out, Sticking to batch mentality, I'm also going to double it up and use it to paint any of the teeth that are showing. This will give the teeth a nice yellowy off-white look. There are no Skaven dentists in this army. We are down to the final colour, and that is some kind of light pink to do all their ears and tails. I don't have a speed paint that I can think of to immediately give me the colour I want, so it's time for a little bit of an experiment to mix up a custom colour. First, we'll grab ourselves 3 drops of Crusader skin, which is a reddish, brownish, pale skin, and then we'll add a drop of the very light, bright Princess Pink. Give that a good stir, and then I'll test it out on the back of my hand. It's looking a little bit more red than pink, so we'll add a second drop of Princess Pink, give it another quick stir, and this time it's looking good and pink. No time to waste, let's take this for a spin on the rats themselves now. This colour wants to go over any of the rats' soft bits. So that's the tails, their ears, their cute little noses. I'll also put some on the inside of their mouths, well, at least any of them with wide open jaws. This colour is going on very light and thin, so may well be something you want to add a second coat of, especially if you've got this grey slap chopped undercoat on your mini. It isn't taking as well as it would with a bright white prime. That's it, guys! Well, the very bulk of the team is done now. All that is really left is to add in some details, custom changes and little things that make your miniatures go to the next level and be more unique and more interesting. The first bit of details we'll add are some of the symbols on their shields. I'll just grab some white paint and go in freehand on any of the shields with enough space for me to paint on. The good news for me is these rats aren't very neat, and that's going to suit my poor ability of freehanding very, very well, and it'll actually look like the rat did it himself. My second go-to detailing and mistake covering is going to be blood. In this actual paint job, I don't think I made that many mistakes that need hiding, but I did, however, think the weaponry was a bit lackluster. It was a bit too much silver and nothing else. So applying a little bit of blood to some of their weapons will make them look all that much more different and more interesting. I'll apply this true blood neat, not watered down or anything in some places, but in others I'm going to then wet my brush and give it a little run down the blade, for example, helping it thin as the blood runs away from where it was acquired on the weapon. In other places I'll do the reverse and make the weapon look a little bit more like it just hacked something up. For my final bit of detailing today, and one that always makes it look like you spent a lot more time on miniatures than you actually have, is rust. Now, just like the weaponry, I'm going to apply it wherever it gets a little bit boring, and in this paint job it's on the rat I accidentally did the grey skin with and the fur and forgot he was wearing a lot of grey silver armour. Let's get him a little bit weathered and make him look more interesting to look at. I'm going to dab this rust into the recesses, as I would assume it would rust mostly there. I'll also do around any rivets that I can see and the odd bit of damage to his armour that he may have taken, allowing some patches of rust to set in. I'll then increase the realism by adding another darker rust texture wash to the mix, and I'll work this into all of the recesses again. The final step is just highlighting some of the plates back up with a bright silver, as though they may have been scratched or just the edges are still showing silver peeping through. I'll be very careful not to do a complete edge highlight, as the patchiness will add to it looking more authentic. And then you can also use a little bit of bright silver to etch in some battle damage anywhere on the armor or weapons that you want. Just do tiny little lines to imply scratches. Then a little bit of blue Peter magic off camera, and we've done the bases and completed these 5 units ready to fight for me on the battlefield. I really enjoyed painting some Skaven again. It's been a very long time, and these miniatures were an absolute treat. Using speed paints and batch painting made these only take a handful of minutes each, and I'll get the 40 in the Skaventide box painted up in no time. Let us know if you'll be picking up this launch box, how you feel about it, and if you are getting it, which miniatures you're most excited about. As always, you've watched it, now go and paint it.